What if life itself is the problem? Not just the bad days, the failures, or the things we can't control, but life as a whole. What if the very thing that keeps us moving, the feeling that we need more, that we need to achieve, to own, to succeed, is the thing that makes us restless, anxious, and never satisfied? This is the problem that Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most honest and unflinching philosophers, dedicated his entire life to. He believed there's a force deep inside us, something he called the will, that's always pushing us to want more. But the problem is it never stops. We reach one goal only to set another. We fulfill one desire only to feel empty and start chasing the next. Schopenhauer saw this cycle as the root of human suffering, but he didn't just stop at the problem. He also searched for answers. Why do we suffer? Why is happiness always out of reach? And is there a way to escape this endless chase? Because for Schopenhauer, life wasn't something to fix, it was something to understand. The world is my representation. Schopenhauer is saying that the world we experience isn't something we see as it really is. Instead, it's more like a picture we create in our own minds. It's shaped by how we think, what we feel, and what we want. And behind all of this, Schopenhauer says it's something called the will. The will is this powerful, instinctive force that drives everything we do. It's not logical or planned, it's more like a hunger that keeps pushing us forward. It's the part of us that always wants something more, whether that's money, success, recognition, or even love. And think about it, how often do we set a goal, reach it, and then immediately start chasing the next thing? That's the will at work. Schopenhauer believed this constant striving keeps us restless. We are never satisfied and we never stop wanting more. Schopenhauer also believed that free will is an illusion. We think we are in control of our decisions, but most of the time we are just following habits, instincts, or what society tells us we should want. And look at how people act today, buying expensive things, showing off online, trying to fit in, but do we ever stop and ask ourselves why we want those things? Or are we just copying what others do? Schopenhauer challenges us to think, are we really making our own choices or are we just reacting to what's around us? And what happens when we finally get what we want? For a moment we feel good, but soon after we start wanting something else. It's like running on a treadmill. We are moving, but we are not really getting anywhere. Schopenhauer believed this cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again keeps us stuck, and it's why so many people feel stressed, anxious, and unfulfilled. But Schopenhauer didn't say we should stop having goals or give up on our ambition. Instead, he's asking us to slow down and think for ourselves. Why am I chasing this? And is this really what I want or just what I've been told to want? The more we ask these questions, the more we can understand what actually matters and maybe even find some freedom from this endless chasing. Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. Schopenhauer believed that suffering is unavoidable. It's built into life and part of being human. We are always in one of two states. We either want something and feel bad because we don't have it, or we get it and feel bored, so we start looking for the next thing. And this back and forth, pain, boredom, never really stops. Schopenhauer said it all comes down to desire. Because we are always chasing something, we rarely stop to ask if we are actually content or if we are just avoiding discomfort by staying busy. We keep hoping the next job, relationship, or vacation will finally make us happy. And maybe it does for a moment, but before you know it, we are already thinking about what's next. And that's what most people do today, try to escape the pain. We fill our time with vacations, parties, shopping, or scrolling through social media. These things keep us distracted so we don't have to face the emptiness underneath. But Schopenhauer believed these distractions are just temporary fixes. They don't solve the real problem, they just push it aside. And even when we get what we want, we quickly lose interest. We start looking for the next thing because we don't know how to just be. For Schopenhauer, boredom wasn't random, it was part of being human. He believed it's what happens when we finally stop chasing things and realize we are still unsatisfied. So what can we do? Schopenhauer isn't telling us to give up completely. He's asking us to notice the pattern. Why are we chasing certain things, and are we choosing them or just avoiding something else? And maybe instead of always trying to run away from boredom or pain, we can start to sit with it, to see what it's actually telling us. People are inclined to think as others think, not because it's true, but because it is accepted. Schopenhauer believed most people don't really think for themselves. Instead, they just follow the crowd. They believe what's popular, they do what's expected, not because they've thought it through, but because it's easier to go along with what everyone else is doing. Schopenhauer thought the main reason is intellectual laziness. Thinking for yourself is hard. It takes time, effort, and sometimes it means questioning things that make you uncomfortable. So most people avoid it. Instead, they copy others, trust authority figures, and stick to traditions, even when those ideas don't make any sense. And you can see this everywhere. People buy things because they are trending. They vote for politicians because they are popular. They join movements because it feels safe to be part of a group. But how often do people actually stop to ask, what do I really believe? Schopenhauer didn't have a very high opinion of the masses. He thought most people were too distracted, too superficial, and too afraid to question the world around them. And because of that, he believed society often pushes down deep thinkers, the people who actually take the time to question things. When we just follow the crowd, we stop being individuals. We stop thinking critically and we lose the ability to decide what's true for ourselves. And the scary part is, most of the time we don't even notice it's happening. And it's not about rejecting everything society says. It's about paying attention to where your ideas come from and making sure they are actually yours. Wealth is like seawater. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Schopenhauer is saying that money and possessions don't actually satisfy us. In fact, the more we have, the more we want. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. Schopenhauer believed we are often looking for happiness in the wrong places. We think having more stuff will make us feel secure and successful, but instead it keeps us hungry, always searching for the next thing. And it's not just about what we want, it's also about what society tells us we should want. Schopenhauer didn't just blame individuals for chasing wealth, he saw it as a part of a larger system. We live in a world that's built on competition and comparison. Capitalism rewards appearances over substance. It encourages us to show off what we have rather than question what we need. We are taught to measure our worth by how much we own, not by who we are. And because the system depends on constant growth, it keeps us wanting more even when we already have enough. Schopenhauer didn't believe in lasting happiness. He thought happiness is just a temporary absence of pain or desire. Once we fulfill one desire, another one quickly takes its place. So when we chase money or material things, we are not actually chasing happiness. We are chasing relief from feeling like something is missing. And because the system feeds this feeling, we get stuck in a loop, always chasing but never arriving. And this is even more true today. People work long hours, stress about promotions, and sacrifice their time, all for the promise of making it. But what does making it actually mean? A bigger house, a better car, more followers? And why do so many people, even after they get what they want, still feel empty? Schopenhauer would say the problem isn't money itself, it's how we use it to cover up emptiness, to avoid asking deeper questions about what we really need. Instead of focusing on the things that bring real meaning, like wisdom, creativity, or relationships, we keep ourselves busy chasing things that only look valuable from the outside. But what can we do? Schopenhauer's answer was introspection. We need to stop and reflect, to think about what actually matters instead of what looks good to other people. He also talked about asceticism, letting go of the need for constant pleasure or status and finding peace in simplicity. And while asceticism might sound extreme, Schopenhauer wasn't saying we should give up everything. It's not about rejecting success, it's about redefining it. So here's the question: are we chasing things because they matter or because we've been told to do? What would success look like if it wasn't tied to money, status, or possessions? And what would happen if we focused less on getting more and more on being more? Schopenhauer reminds us that no car, no house, and no vacation can ever fill a deeper sense of emptiness, because real meaning doesn't come from what we have, it comes from who we are. The greatest achievements of the human spirit are expressions of its struggle to rise above the will. So what's the alternative? How do we step away from this endless cycle of wanting and feeling unsatisfied? For Schopenhauer, art wasn't just something to admire, it was a way to rise above the will. When we experience real art, we are pulled out of everyday desires and worries. It lets us see life more clearly and feel something deeper. But not all art is the same. Schopenhauer believed that different forms of art offer different levels of escape. Architecture shows us the structure and power of the physical world. Painting and sculpture capture beauty, emotions, and human struggles. Literature and drama explore desires, conflict, and suffering, helping us reflect on what it means to be human. And then there's music. For Schopenhauer, music was the highest form of art, not because it entertains, but because it speaks directly to the soul. He believed real music, not the shallow, repetitive noise we often hear today, captures the essence of human struggle. It reflects the tension, longing, and release we feel inside. And it doesn't just distract us, it mirrors the will itself and helps us understand our emotions. This kind of music isn't about fame or trends, it's about truth. It's the kind of music that doesn't just make you feel something, it makes you face something. And while art helps us to step outside ourselves, philosophy challenges us to look deeper into ourselves. Philosophy doesn't give us easy answers, it forces us to ask hard questions. What really matters? Why do we suffer? How do we find meaning? Instead of offering distractions, philosophy gives us perspective. It helps us to see the patterns in life, the struggles we go through, and the desires that control us, so we can break free from them. In today's world, it's easy to get lost in distractions, social media, binge-watching shows, or chasing likes and followers. Schopenhauer reminds us that there's more to life than just being busy or entertained. He challenges us to slow down and spend time with things that actually make us feel something. Whether that's a beautiful piece of art, a timeless piece of music, or a philosophical idea that forces us to think. Because those are the things that remind us we are human. So my questions are, when was the last time you let yourself sit and think? Or listen to music, not modern noise, but something timeless that actually made you feel something? When was the last time you faced something deeper instead of distracting yourself from it? Schopenhauer believed those moments, whether we are lost in a song, absorbed in a painting, or thinking through a big idea, are what can give us relief from the will and maybe even help us rise above it. Compassion is the basis of all morality. Schopenhauer believed that compassion, the ability to feel and care about someone else's suffering, is the foundation for living an ethical life. For Schopenhauer, compassion is what separates us from being completely controlled by the will, that endless drive to want more and focus only on ourselves. When we recognize someone else's pain, we step outside of our own desires, even if it's just for a moment. And in that moment, we are not just chasing things for ourselves anymore. We are connecting to something bigger. Compassion reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles. It shifts our focus from taking to giving, from competing to caring. But if we look at the world today, it doesn't always feel like there's much compassion. People seem focused on themselves, what they can get, what they can show off, how they can stand out, and at the same time the world feels more divided than ever. Social media encourages comparison instead of connection. News cycles highlight conflict instead of cooperation. And because we are so busy focusing on ourselves, it's easy to ignore the struggles of others. Schopenhauer believed that compassion, not greed and not power, should be the foundation for how we treat each other. He thought the only way to transcend the will, that restless desire for more, is to care about something beyond ourselves. And as already mentioned, Schopenhauer even went as far as to say that the ultimate way to free ourselves is through asceticism, letting go of desires and living a simpler life. But this doesn't mean we have to give up everything we own and live in isolation. For Schopenhauer, asceticism wasn't about punishment, it was about freedom. It's about learning to detach from the things we don't actually need, whether that's material possessions, approval from others, or the constant chase for more. It's about focusing on what really matters. And maybe for us today this could mean spending less time chasing status and more time building connections, letting go of distractions and spending more time in reflection, learning to find joy in simplicity, not because we have to, but because it allows us to breathe. What if we focus less on getting more and more on giving more? What if we ask ourselves, how can I add value to someone else's life? How can I make things better? Not just for me, but for others too. Because Schopenhauer believed that helping others isn't just good for them, it's also a way to free ourselves from always being trapped in self-interest. Schopenhauer challenges us to see the world differently, to recognize that we are all connected and that real meaning comes not from taking, but from giving. And maybe that's the real answer to feeling unfulfilled. Not chasing more, but caring more. Because when we focus less on what we want and more on how we can help, we might finally find the freedom we've been looking for. Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophy views life as driven by a restless force he called the will. It's what's keeping us wanting, chasing and striving, never fully satisfied, always searching for more. And with that comes suffering, the constant tension between desire and boredom. But Schopenhauer didn't just point out the problem, he also gave us ways to rise above it. Through art and music, we can step outside ourselves and feel something deeper than distraction. Through philosophy, we can question what really matters and face life honestly. And through compassion, we can look beyond ourselves and connect with something deeper. Schopenhauer wasn't trying to fix life, he was trying to understand it. And maybe that's the real challenge for all of us. Not to escape the struggle, but to see it for what it is. So the question I'll leave you with is this: what's really driving you? And if you stop chasing for a moment, what would you see?